say the economies will be disturbed, industries will be disturbed, the engagements and the employments, even coming to things as good as or as required as necessary as food security, will be having a challenge. All the wars are accumulating challenges going forward.
Recently, a lot of nations, specifically India and China in case, have dumped US Treasuries because of certain reasons. But you're saying Japan hasn't done that, although they should be doing that.
अब ये वो काम हो गया जहाँ गांव का चौधरी है वो खुद उधार नहीं ले रहा है, उसका मुनीम भी उधार लेके उसको देगा. It's a castle of cards, a house of cards,
Yeah,
which is unsustainable for long term.
international Hawala.
Funny, yes, you can always say that.
Hi, Sandeep sir. Hi. Welcome to the SPA podcast again.
Thank you.
Right. And so, viewers, just to, I think, give the context, we started about a month ago, right? And the first three videos have done really, really well. The response has been really positive, and people have appreciated the way you have put forward your points. The entire substantive analysis that you gave is specifically what people liked, right?
Thank you.
And people have requested more such videos, so here we are again today, right? So just to sum the journey, what we have covered so far. So we talked about why world could be heading towards another global financial crisis, right? Then we also talked about US dollar specifically, how US dollar has been dominant and why uh, it is not it could lose its relevance at what it is valued right now. We also talked about US debt in particular, that the rising US debt, which is about, let's say, $37 trillion, and what's the story behind it. And today we would like to do a continuation of that, which is specifically again to US debt. But we'll talk about something interesting here, which I think we referred it very minutely in some of our last episodes, was that there are certain countries or nations which are contributing to that specific lending which is happening in the US. So, for example, you talked about how even a small country like Cayman Islands, that they are actually lending more than their GDP
Absolutely.
to US, which doesn't make sense, right? Uh, so this being a very small nation, but what about the bigger nations, right? For example, there are many advanced economies which have been competitive to US, right? So are there any specific economy that we can talk about today, which can be the case in point to discuss this, US debt situation further?
Certainly, Vishwas, I will be very keen to share some insights on what my perception about, say, the lending from Japan to US is.
Right.
Japan is a larger contributor in US debt, is amongst the highest in the current scenario because India, China, or the other economies have been also downselling their American debt portfolios and treasuries.
Right.
How does this work and why is Japan still holding on to that?
Uh,
Because they also see something similar to what others are seeing, but they are holding on to the US debt.
right.
I have a completely different perspective in terms of why Japan is buying this, holding it this.
Right. So just to clear this up, that recently a lot of nations, specifically India and China in case, have dumped US Treasuries because of certain reasons.
Canada as well.
Canada as well, right? But you're saying Japan hasn't done that, although they should be doing that given their current
I'm not
situation.
saying they should be doing that, but
Okay.
I have a different perspective about that.
Right.
Japan is an economy which is fairly uniquely priced. They carry negative interest rates for a lot of decades, and now they are into marginal interest rate. There's a strong trade which we call as yen carry trade.
Hmm.
They have the lowest interest rates and the highest debt to GDP.
Right.
These are basic economic defiances, I'll say, which is there.
Yeah.
A very elementary statement is everything as per economics is determined by demand and supply.
Right.
All the prices related to whether it is the interest rate has to be determined on basis of demand and supply.
Absolutely.
Now, Japanese demand for the loans is very high, and especially after the last decade of 90s,
Hmm.
where they went through a bad recession and a regressive and a stagflation kind of a scenario.
Right.
They have started coming back on the track, but now all the growth in spite of marginal growth, is in spite all the growth of the economy is negligible.
Yeah.
They're barely growing at 1 or 2%,
Yeah, I think the recent reports that have also come in, they are valuing them at even under 1%.
even under 1%. But their debt is increasing consistently.
Right.
So they are borrowing heavily. What they are borrowing for? Not to feed their consumption, because the Japanese are supposed to be the highest savers also.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
when they are saving, then why the economy needs to borrow,
Yeah.
and that too at the lowest rate.
Right.
So this I fail to understand.
Right.
Simultaneously, they are the highest investors in US. There's something wrong which is visible,
Right.
because
So,
I don't agree that a economy will be borrowing at the lowest rate, the maximum amount to be invested in something else,
right.
some other destination, some other economy.
Right.
This has been going on post 1990 to 2000 decade, after the lost decade kind of statement, which is used for what Japanese were doing or had to undergo. Now, was this a so-called deep state attack or a taking through the recession? Because before that there was a high escalation on the prices, and then there was a sudden dump, and post the dump there was a recession, and after that maybe a settlement was negotiated and things are moving, ignoring the rate of interest, the level of borrowing, but in lieu there is a large investment also in US Treasuries.
Okay. So just to, I think, for just my clarity also, and I think viewers would also like that. Uh, so the case in point is that their debt to GDP ratio is really, really high,
237%.
237%. And you're saying that all this borrowing that is happening, it is not feeding their internal consumption. It is not being spent on what it should be spent ideally.
The Japanese are supposed to be the highest savers. Their
Right.
contribution in the savings for all the borrowing is supposed to be done by Japanese.
Absolutely. And you specifically mentioned this decade, which is 1990s, where things, let's say, started to uh, move badly for them. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what exactly happened in 1990s? If you can explain that particular period, what was like, for example, what was Japan like between 1980 to 1990, and what happened after that?
So 1980 to 1990, or maybe before that also, it was a steady economy with decent presence and lot of production also. So you will remember all the names which were having meaningful visibility.
Like Sony and all
They,
brands
no,
and all.
they had meaningful
Yeah, right,
visibilities.
right.
And then they were good demand also, and they were always in limelight kind of a product. The first preferred option for my TV I wanted to buy was a Japanese TV, or for the
Right.
even the two recorders or the everything instrument,
Yeah.
especially electronic equipments, used to be Japanese.
Even cars also they ruled Toyota.
All of a sudden, no, Toyota is still there.
Yeah.
Toyota is still there, so you can't ignore that.
Yeah.
But after that, a lot of sheen was lost from the brightness of Japanese economy post 1990, because there was a sudden rise, a huge rise, and then there was a huge dump.
Right.
And since then, simultaneously, the debt to GDP, the borrowing levels, as well as the investing levels.
But why did the dump happen? Let's suppose if they were rising so high, if that economy was rising
Now,
so
that is where there is a something which is beyond the normal,
high.
because there are no statistical changes, but then there is a reason on basis of which all the prices are determined. As I said, A is about demand and supply.
Right.
B is about valuation.
Mhm.
Valuation is a perception in terms of expectation. And that is where whole of the world story lies. I could value something at 40 times or something at 5 times without having a relevance related to its demand and supply. Or even I link demand and supply, but that demand and supply could be artificially triggered.
Absolutely.
So if I want to jack up something very high, all of a sudden I'll have my own set of buyers only to jack that up.
Right.
And I like to dump it, then I like to dump it all of a sudden, so that there is no buyer, and also whatever is theirs is acquired is handed over to the rest of the investors or the people or the consumers, whatever this industry segment is. In similar scenario, if that jump has been done or that pull-up has been done, and then everything was dumped, the fact is that Japan went through a deep recession with a stagflation in 1990 to 2000 year.
All right.
So that is why that particular 10-year phase is called as the lost decade for Japan, where there were many implications with all everyone associated with the Japanese economy.
Understood.
Post that, when everything was settled, or when the storm got sort of settled and the
Mm.
revival started beginning, the only difference is now that the debt to GDP has started increasing.
Right.
When I have gone through a recession, why are people willing to lend me more? And who is the lender? My own citizens. Bank of Japan will lend to, like the Bank of Japan's lending in the Bank of Japan portfolio is more than 50%. I don't understand that.
Mm.
The own investors, their own banks are holding those things.
Right.
So there is something more than normal and what is being led by and understood by average individual. And this is a story which apparently is not right, but has been going on since long.
Right.
Uh, and everybody believes it completely. Now we have best of the economists and the trading desks which set up yen carry trade,
Mm.
that I can borrow cheaper from Japan and invest at a higher rate. And that's a very smart trade. Why you can borrow from there at cheaper rate and why you can give to somebody else? Are Japanese not smart enough to lend that directly over there?
Yeah.
What does that trade mean?
Right.
At least it certainly defies economics. It could justify valuations and balance trades in whichever format they could. I will not never agree to a perspective that something can, there is a demand for a product, but there is somebody simultaneously a commercial capitalist kind of a country economy with a good financials
Mm.
who is able to still deliver that thing at a cheaper price.
So, like you're saying that they're internally, because this is the same situation that you're seeing with US, the same story that happens again and again. Whenever they are stuck, they'll print more dollar, right?
Now, this time the only difference is that they are not borrowing it only for themselves, they are borrowing it simultaneously for somebody else also. Because they remain the largest lender to US also.
Hmm.
अब ये वो काम हो गया जहाँ गांव का चौधरी है, वो अब खुद उधार नहीं ले रहा है, उसका मुनीम भी उधार लेके उसको दे रहा है.
Right.
And there are some differences which are emerging. I won't call it a absolute. I don't want to get into anything controversial. With all my disclaimers, I'm just talking a bare kind of a economic analysis in terms of why will somebody borrow at a lower rate, have money at a lower rate, and lend it to somebody else at a lower rate or at whatever rate, not to earn interest when you're already a largest borrower with the highest debt to GDP.
Right.
So that economics is beyond my understanding.
But why, again, like you said, that it is even beyond your understanding. But Japan is the perception of Japan largely has always been one of those most prudent nations that you can talk about in terms of building quality companies, quality culture, their people. Then why would they get into such a trap? Is it because of the US influence? Because US has largely had a large influence over over the Japanese nation post World War II. Is that where this is coming from, or is it just that entire
I really
trap?
don't know. I have not have, having a specific insight into what is the factor which is driving that.
Hmm.
All I am saying is that there is something beyond normal. Now, I don't want to talk fictional that it is a deep state thing or it is X thing or the Y thing. I
Right.
don't know that. But simultaneously, all I will say and will enhance and highlight
Hmm.
that the largest borrower has a good reserve and using all the reserves to invest it elsewhere
Right.
at the lowest rate of interest. And we call that yen carry trade. And when that trade has to be unwound, the market is also impacted
Hmm.
and market gets its own set of jitters because the amount exceeds $1.2 trillion, or almost closer to $1.3 trillion. So that's not normal.
Yeah.
And how many currencies or countries which have faced multiple volatilities?
Right.
Because volatility is not a case of, in economic stage, cannot be without a trigger. You could have a gradual growth or you could have a gradual decline or you could have multiple trends which will be emerging. But there's something which is over influenced by some external factors.
Right.
I really don't know in terms of what those external factors is, but are we seeing those kind of things? Yes, we are seeing those kind of things. Are we likely to see some more such action? We are very close to seeing some much such action.
Right.
Like today, what we are witnessing, what we have seen recently in the tariff, and now the H1B visas
Right.
and the other tariffs. So how will that be moving on, or what are the factors? Because ultimately there is a deficit,
Right.
and there is a deficit which was at 1%, now going to 5%.
Right.
I specified that in my last video related to the US debt. You have seen that the link is there,
Right.
so you can specify whatever you feel that. But then this is not what is in continuity of a normal economic transaction, is all I maintain.
Right. And just to play the devil's advocate here, so for example, if there is an economy which has a very large debt to GDP ratio, right? Can these nations recover now? And when, let's say, they try to recover, number one, are there any examples of such recoveries? Or is it like for the first time we are facing such a situation where the debt crisis is so large that now these nations will basically have to resort to, for example, like H1B visa thing, like,
You say that's an American thing.
right,
The only stuff which I am talking about, or what could be the implications related to this, is this time whenever the storm escalates,
right,
which is set to escalate, there is no ambiguity about that. The only thing is that the balloon has been blown up so many times and so high that when does it burst is unpredictable, but will it burst for sure?
right,
And who will be the first one to face the burst or fear the impact? Now that first one might not be the main guy. They have already so many people lined up in front of them who will be having the impact. That is the only concern. So there is a defense line. They have created a moat related to that. That okay, we are not the first one. We are still a study nation. We will still try to find a solution around. We will still have the strength of dollar which we can use as a weapon always, and they'll try to continue with that.
right. And then where does this leave yen as a currency? Because uh, we are mm, like now many people have started to talk about the US dollar correction is likely to happen, right? Then are we seeing the nations which have basically been lending to US, and this case in point Japan, will they also see a major correction in their currency?
There will be extreme volatility.
Hmm.
Maybe they see through some scenarios. It's a very last couple of decades, the behavior has been very ethical, very simple, conservative decision makers. But no conservative guy will be taking that kind of leverage on their uh, economy in terms of their borrowings related to the GDP. Just highlighting that again. If you are conservative in all your decisions, then that is because you have been beaten up and bruised somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because you are bruised, so now you want to be cautious about everything. That is human psychology. That's the
Right,
behavior.
right,
Now, with that, you are saying that, okay, you will still be, will the economy be impacted? It is already impacted. It is just being covered up with some sham.
right,
And when will it open up and what will be the impact related to it? God knows.
right, right.
It certainly cannot be pleasant.
Mm, mm. So, like, my another question to this would be, I think I asked this you in the very first podcast also, that how the 2008 crisis versus, let's say, what can come now, how are they different, right? Uh, Obviously, implications of that would also be different. What would we eventually see? Because if the global order is so much at risk, right? So, what are we looking at? Are we looking at massive unemployment rates? Are we looking at stock markets obviously taking a huge hit that is there? But what are the major broad implications that you see that governments will have to face?
Say the economies will be disturbed, industries will be disturbed, the engagements and the employments, even coming to things as good as or as required as necessary as food security, will be having a challenge. All the wars are accumulating challenges going forward. They are not addressing any of the requirements. They are accumulating up challenges and pain, which will be unleashed as we move forward.
Right.
So, will this be somehow restricted to one country or two countries? No, this will be a global pain. Will be having an impact all across.
So, sir, this entire discussion, that you just explained what is happening, that Uh, there is no point in why Japan is, let's say, uh, lending money in such a scenario. But specifically, other economies are also doing it, right? It's not that US isn't doing it, or maybe some other economy isn't doing it. And this has been going for a long time. Like you said, it is post 1990s. Japan has been involved in such an activity. Uh,
Post 2000.
Post 2000, right? So, is this a particular concept that these major advanced economies have developed? Is there a term for it? Because if it is happening so rapidly and everybody has been doing it, it must have emerged from something of a particular concept. So, is there something like that?
See, Vishwas, this is not only about Japan or the leading economies or the growing economies. Even Luxembourg and Cayman Islands have been the top lenders.
Yeah,
This is about round tripping.
round tripping. Okay.
And round tripping is like when A lends to B to be given to C and coming back to A.
Hmm.
And that is a kind of transaction, or maybe A giving to B or raising it from somewhere, coming back to A. Ultimately, there is nothing which is transacting, but it's only creating valuations.
Hmm.
And we are hiding the deficit in the growth of valuation.
Right.
So a real value, fairly calculated, will have a specification in terms of what we are transacting about.
Hmm.
But in every case, if we are round tripping it and we are enhancing it to in one format or the other, and making the public at large feel that they have it's secured and it's safe,
Hmm.
I think is the it ultimately has to fall. It's a castle of cards, a house of cards,
Yeah.
which is unsustainable for long term. The balloon, as I said, has been overblown now,
Right.
and it's very close to falling where it will be having a cascading impact.
Understood.
It is not restricted only to the impact related to this, will not be restricted only to the direct economies, it will have impact all across.
Right.
And that is what my concern is, that still all efforts are being made to just facilitate the one more round, because
Hmm.
enough is not sufficient. It's always more and more and more.
Right. Uh, I think that term has a ring to it, round tripping. It's basically explains it's like international Hawala. If-
Funny, yes, you can always say that it is down tripping which is happening,
right.
and valuations is a key component to in the round tripping,
Right.
where these things are hidden and where the game is being justified
Right.
apparently for public large.
Right. Right. I think yeah, that's the perfect way to sum this up. So, guys, tell us in the comments how what did you think of this podcast specifically, and would you like us to cover specific countries or let's say talk about specific economies of certain countries? Because this was, let's say, very good analysis of how Japan has functioned over the last 2 or 3 decades. We can do this for other countries as well.
What I'll still like to further add
Yeah.
is that I'm not the only one who is analyzing it. It's visible, it is being transacted, but it has never been escalated.
Right.
It has never been brought to public at large. I'll just request or I'll ask people to see this, analyze it, and take their understanding in terms of where do they see the gap.
Yeah, and everything is available. It's available on government
No,
website.
I'll share it on the links also.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.